I will open the floor for any public comment. And I don't see any. So I will close public comments. We will adjourn to closed session and be back at 7 p.m. Thank you. Clerk Coffee, you ready?
We're ready.
Ready to go.
Great. Okay. Welcome everyone to City of Pacifica City Council meeting of October 26th. It is 7:02 and I will first ask Clerk Coffee to read some rules for this evening.
This meeting is being held by video conference with no physical location open to the public. The public can observe and participate in the meeting via the Zoom link provided in the agenda or by phone to the dial-in number and the webinar ID provided in the meeting agenda. This meeting may also be observed live on local TV channel 26 or online at www.cityofpacifica.org/live-stream. For this meeting, live verbal public comments may be made through participation by Zoom. For members of the public participating via Zoom, use the raise hand button to indicate that you wish to speak on an agenda item or during oral communications when the mayor calls upon that agenda item. For those participating by phone, use *9 or *9 to raise your hand to request to speak. The city clerk will call upon speakers at the appropriate time to unmute yourself and will call on you with your screen name or the last 4 digits of your phone number if you're dialing in. Please clearly state your full name for the record at the start of your public comment. Written and email comments will not be read during the meeting, but will be made part of the written record and provided to council members. Email comments are not being monitored during the live meeting. The format of the meeting may be altered or the meeting may be canceled if needed. You may check on the status of the meeting by visiting the city's website at www.cityofpacifica.org for any updates.
Great, thank you, Clerk Coffey. Can we have a roll call?
Councilmember O'Neill,
Yes, or here.
Councilmember Beer,
Here.
Councilmember Vadalas,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer,
Here.
Mayor Martin.
Here. And I have officially called this meeting to order. Just want to clarify that. And can we have a salute to the flag led by Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Any closed session report?
No reportable action.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Is there any council member who wishes to pull any item off of consent? I don't see any hands raised. How about any of our public? Is there anyone from the public that would like to pull or make a comment on anything from the consent calendar? It will be items 1 through 6. I don't see any hands raised. So I will ask for a motion.
I move to approve the consent calendar as is.
Second,
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember O'Neill,
yes.
Councilmember Beer,
Yes.
Councilmember Vadalas,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Martin.
Yes.
And the consent calendar passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, on to oral communications. Now is the time for anyone who wishes to speak to the council on any items that are not on our agenda. Now would be the time to raise your hand. And I see a couple hands raised, so I will hand the floor over to Deputy Clerk Brooks.
Speaker is Sue Degree. Please state your name for the record when Clerk Coffey starts the timer.
Hi, Sue Degree. I've been concerned about this for a long time, but I'm getting more and more concerned as COVID goes on. And that is outreach to the public to enable the public, first of all, to be reached, and secondly, to know what's going on at the city and to be able to be engaged in a timely manner that many are not on media. And I'm concerned that throughout Pacifica, many people have no idea what is going on, at least not in a timely manner. And if they do, being able to participate is very difficult. That's it.
All right, thanks, Sue.
Next, we'll hear from Suzanne Moore. Please state your name when Clerk Coffey starts the timer.
Dan Moore. Good evening. Autumn's here and I have a few thoughts. I received a recent reminder from my medical providers that I thought worth sharing. With the flu season approaching and COVID cases rising, we should take care of each other. Wear masks, get our flu shots, physically distance, and be kind. I also wanted to acknowledge that I'm very grateful for the work of the Pacifica Resource Center. The PRC provides food and resources to those in our community economically impacted, and the demand has been increased with this pandemic. I encourage all of us to do what we can to bolster their efforts, especially as the holiday season approaches. We cannot forget our moral obligation to those in Pacifica who are unhoused. We must continue to seek solutions that will provide a pathway to housing and increase safety, especially in this pandemic. In a recent community meeting on homelessness in which county experts shared their knowledge and recommendations, we learned there are solutions if there is community will. I also want to take a moment to thank Mayor Deirdre Martin as she nears the end of her service on Pacifica City Council. You've been a reassuring leader during the pandemic, and I'm grateful for your passion, sense of humor, and dedication to our community. Again, thank you. And this pretty much concludes my remarks this evening.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Anita Reese, you're our next speaker. Please state your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Anita Reese, and I'm the director of the Pacifica Resource Center. And I want to thank the city and the community for your ongoing support while we continue to respond to COVID and its impact on Pacifica residents. Our office continues to be open to the community with limited hours that we are open to the public. We're open to visitors Monday and Tuesday mornings, Wednesday and Thursday afternoons, and there's no change to our Friday hours. And when our office is closed to visitors, we are available by phone only. We are currently enrolling Pacifica families in our Thanksgiving and Holiday Joy program. Thanksgiving support will be during our regular grocery drive-through and deliveries on November 18th. We will provide prepared groceries, pre-packed groceries to all, and for those who sign up in advance, we'll provide a gift card for other holiday items. Our Holiday Joy item will still match PRC families with generous donors, but we will only be accepting and providing gift cards to minimize risk to our families and our donors. We will be collecting gift card packages for distribution the first week of December. And I'll have more information soon. With October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, I wanted to reiterate that PRC is a safe place for our community and share how we help folks feel safe, listened to, and cared for during their most difficult and scary times. Last month, a Pacifican came to PRC after leaving an abusive relationship. Her batterer was arrested, but was going to be released soon. She needed a safe place to live while she continued to work. We immediately connected her with Cora, a local nonprofit solely dedicated to helping those affected by domestic violence, and also referred her to the county's coordinated entry system so that she could get access to shelter. After a few days and just before her batterer was released, she was offered a bed and she was safely housed and was able to continue to work. We continue to provide those kinds of services as well as groceries to continue that are being delivered to seniors and at-risk families. Again, those are offered on a weekly basis at our drive-through on Wednesdays in the parking lot at the American Legion Hall, which is at 555 Buell. Folks who are signed up in advance have a scheduled appointment time. Otherwise, folks can arrive at 3:30 and we'll get groceries to them as quickly as possible. We're also still available to help pay mortgage and rent. So if a renter or a homeowner needs help paying their November or past due rent or mortgage, please get them in touch with PRC. And then though we often highlight our Unhoused on the Coast outreach work, our homeless services are just one part of our work. But if you know or see someone who's living on the streets, in an encampment, or in a vehicle, please contact our UC outreach staff by email at ucoutreach@PAC Resource Center or calling Daniel Gardner at 650-575-4861. And our general office line is 650-738-7470. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. So I will close oral communications and open council communications. Anyone on council wish to speak? Everyone's on mute, so if anyone wants to raise their hand, they can do this. All right, Sue Waterloss.
Okay. This past 2 weeks, I went to the county meeting, which is always interesting. We learn what's happening. We've been in a better area for the past week, and probably 2 weeks, we may go into a different color of levels of COVID tomorrow, but I'm not positive. We'll keep our fingers crossed. I met 3 people who live on Balboa Way, which was interesting because they showed me their homes and what's happened during this redoing of the sewer lines. City and County Association of Government, I think was my most shocked I've been in a long time, because they gave us the regional housing allocation allotments, and we are at 1,943 units of housing for the 5 years. We currently have a number of 413, of which I believe we've built approximately 62 units. So now it's about 5 times as much as the allotment before, and they've put us in the same categories as Burlingame, which we're not. I went to the Democrats meeting to listen to Jerry Hill, so 3 or 4 times now we've got to say really good things about Jerry Hill and that we'll miss him. It was really good to just like have a Zoom sit down. I went to a speaker series on equality, which was quite interesting. It was 2 hours about equality, and I was enlightened on certain things and upset about others. So I'll end it there.
All right, thanks, Sue. Mike O'Neill.
Hello, everybody. I just sitting here looking at my calendar, and I attended the Economic Development Committee meeting with Councilperson Sue Beckmeyer, and I'll let her elaborate on what happened there because she went to the event and I didn't, so she knows it better. Also, I did attend the airport roundtable. Our noise monitor had the first data collected last week, and being it's a new machine, he had to download it, interpret it, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to try to touch base with him to find out the numbers, and I have tried to get in touch with the New Tribune to see if they want to publish those results in the paper. And so that, I don't know if that's going to be exciting, depressing, or whatever, but that's going to be happening. I also was on the strategic plan committee for the airport roundtable. Attended the LAFCO meeting, and for the first time, I just saw a map of the Peninsula Healthcare District in the grand jury report. And it was interesting to see that apparently, according to this map, and I have never heard of this before, part of Pacifica is in the Peninsula Healthcare District. So I'm going to have to actually research to see what they do, what services are available, because that could expand counseling services at the schools, etc. So I will probably ask Mary Beer to be part of that, because in her day job is probably the one that could benefit from that. And what is interesting is the Peninsula Healthcare District is building I don't know if it's assisted living or what Alzheimer's housing in Burlingame, but part of it is low income, restricted for Alzheimer's patients or whatever, and that is a quite hefty bill. So that means maybe some of our residents could actually take advantage of the low, affordable dementia care housing in Burlingame. I don't know what else you'd want to call it that. And also, going back to my old school board days, I attended virtually the Kent Award County School Board Association dinners because my wife is a principal and her school won the Kent Award, in addition to being a California Distinguished School this year also. So anyhow, that's my report.
Mike. Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer.
I have a couple things to report. As Councilmember O'Neill was mentioning, the Economic Development Committee met on August 13th, and welcomed some new members that had just been selected by us. Two out of the 4. We'll have 2 more coming next month. So it was a really robust conversation, a lot of opportunity for everyone to get to know each other, but they also did some really important business that night too, around deciding to sponsor an event that was happening at the Sea Bowl, which the private property owner there offered the space for an evening under the stars in your cars, which otherwise known as the drive-in movie. And there was a very large blow-up screen set up in front of the Sea Bowl, and then the cars all parked there. It was, the movie was Chasing Mavericks. There were a lot of small businesses in Pacifica that were participating and had advertising in a coupon book that the attendees received for going and frequenting these businesses. And then there were a lot of ads that were on the big screen. And it was very well attended and a lot of fun. Everyone, it was amazing how easily people got in and out. I was stunned, especially the out. How did that happen so fast? So it was great. The other thing I wanted to make sure to mention is that last Saturday, 2 days ago, the 24th, we had the Beautification Advisory Committee group, the subcommittee responsible for the bulb out planters, that program on Palmetto Avenue, and they had a work party, a work day, inviting the groups that had sponsored the different bulb outs to come and learn a bit about replacing plants and how to, carefully and safely do that, considering the drip lines that those groups had all installed when they planted their plants. And generally update and remulch and get ready for winter. So that was great. And there will be another such work day on November 7th, I think at 9:30 in the morning, a Saturday. Is that right? 7th, yes. The last thing I wanted to report is that there has been an extension on a program which is called the Small Residential Property Owners Program, which is a dedicated source of funds, $2 million, that was set aside by the County Board of Supervisors to establish a grant program for small scale residential rental property owners who have been affected by COVID, because they have not been able to collect the rents that their tenants cannot pay. And in some cases, tenants have been able to obtain some relief funding. So there's another corollary program, which was another $2 million set aside by the Board of Supervisors to address that. There's a lot of stipulations and regulations around this, but I think it really will pertain to a lot of smaller residential property owners who may not have been receiving their full rent and who rely on that rental income as their primary source of income. So for the period April through August, the maximum grant amount that you can receive, a person can receive, is $6,000, but it's $6,000. And you can learn more about it by going to www.smcstrong.org. And so please do look into that. And the deadline is November 6th. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Sue. Mary?
Hello, everybody. Yeah, thanks for that, Sue. That's really important information that you just shared. So thank you so much. So I attended the Emergency Preparedness and Safety Commission meeting. We have some new motivated commissioners on board, so it's really nice. They're going to be doing a lot of work, so I'm excited about that. I attended a webinar from the Housing Leadership Council. It was called Stronger Together, where we learned about the intersection between housing and environmentalists. So like really looking at how you can combine housing policies with environmental policies and how they can work really well together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and create housing. And it was very interesting, and I'm hoping that we can get some more information from them in front of council. Just, I felt like I learned a lot, and I think that we could all learn a lot about that. Yeah, it was really good. What else? It was a little quiet for me, actually. However, Halloween's coming, and the Park Beach and Recreation is having a drive-through event on October 31st from 5:30 to 7:30 at 170 Santa Maria Drive, where people can drive through and get some candy and meet the witch. And there is a group on Facebook called Pacifica Locals, run by Vicki Moore, and she has created a map of all the houses in Pacifica that are going to have decorations that you can drive by and see. really awesome. There's so many people on that map. I think I don't want to say the exact number because I'm not sure, but it's a lot. So if you want to check that out, you can contact her or go on Facebook to Pacifica Locals. It's pretty nice that people are trying to do things just to be festive, right? In a time where maybe we don't feel so festive. And then it's a little tardy, but I wanted to thank Cindy Abbott and the Sanchez Arts Center for the 50/50 showing. I went out there with my daughter and my son-in-law, and it was such a beautiful showing. And, it was safe, and we had fun, and we looked at all this art. It just felt really good to do something like that. So check out the Sanchez Art Center. I want to thank them for keeping everything going during this pandemic, and having my daughter and son-in-law feel like adults and buy art. So it was really cool. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thanks, Mary. I want to thank Council Members O'Neill and Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer for working on the Chasing Mavericks drive-in movie night. I attended it and volunteered my wagon for it, as well as my niece, who got to work most of the event while I enjoyed it, and it was awesome. So that was really cool. Thank you. Beach Coalition did a great job, and also gets a donation for their work. So it was a win-win for everyone. I attended my Peninsula Clean Energy meeting, which had more items on the agenda than I wish to talk about. But we're doing great things, and we actually brought someone else into Peninsula Clean Energy, Los Banos, and that's amazing because we're expanding. We had our first OZPAC meeting, open space and Parkland Advisory Committee meeting, and it was great to see everybody's faces again, hear from GGNRA and Parks Conservancy. We heard from a member of the public who was speaking up about the parking situation and sort of general crowdedness and lack of consideration for the neighbors over in the parking area and the neighborhood in Fairway Park. So if you are one of those people, which you're probably not because you're a Pacifican, just be mindful that those folks are really going through a lot right now because everybody wants to get out. Everybody's looking for a place to go, and it's a quick and easy access that GGNRA publicizes as having a parking spot when there's only like 2 or 3 there and a bathroom. So they're not used to that kind of traffic, and just be a little bit more mindful and respectful. So good news is that GGNRA and Parks Conservancy heard that information and got a lot and was able to take notes and things like that. I watched the Planning Commission meeting from last week, and I just wanted to report that we had all heard an appeal a couple weeks ago and recommended a 3-to-1 tree replacement. And at that commission meeting, a bunch of folks from Tree City also showed up last week. And they also, the Planning Commission also recommended a 3-to-1 tree replacement on Hickey and Monterey, the work that's going on there. So that's a good news story for trees and for our economy, because we know that trees actually increase the value of our homes. I also attended the PBNR meeting, and I don't even know if that was before or after our last council meeting. It feels like it's a lot. And I just wanted to report that they are actively working on the surf equity issues and have agreed that they will create a nonprofit status for a permit, and they're working out the logistics of what that will look like. I want to give thanks to all the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Commissioners who are working so hard on that. They do a lot of hard work as it is, but it's been a lot in a short amount of time, and I want to just send my thanks to them for working on it, because it is so timely and relevant, and it means a lot to a lot of people. So thank you. I wanted to just remind everyone that we are still having insane fireworks going off. The people who need to hear this are not on this call, but for the record, stop doing this, especially when we are under, power safety shutoff events, when we're under watch. We've got trucks standing by, we've got PG&E standing by. We're still receiving emails. the good news is that this council had all agreed that we wanted to start talking about it and possibly even throw it on the ballot this year. Pandemic hit, that got pushed, but I encourage this council to move forward with that without me next year, because people are still upset about what can we do about it. And then two other things I wanted to say was Arbor Day is coming up. Pacifica's Arbor Day celebration on November 14th. You can, I think all the spots are taken for your pandemic pod planting, but you can do your own planting at home. You can email Tree City Pacifica at gmail.com and they will assist you in doing your own tree planting at your house. So that's going to be a fun one. And finally, just to tack on to what Councilmember Beer said, we are having Halloween this weekend. And I wanted to just be very clear that traditional trick-or-treating is not recommended this year, unless maybe you set it up with a few of your neighbors who you already know, or maybe your little pandemic pod. But it's practically canceled. And I just want everyone to know that. And I know I, for instance, with my children, we are having a little pandemic pod party for our children, and they will not miss out on the candy. That will be for sure. And Mary mentioned all the wonderful things the city's doing, and Pacifica Locals Group. Thank you, Vicki Moore, for doing that. So just try to do things that are really safe, and no trick-or-treating. Traditionally, it's just not recommended this year. Stay safe, wash your hands, keep your kids safe. And thank you. And one request I do have is that city manager Woodhouse, if you do have an update on the parks, I think they are open, or at least I saw some folks at some of the parks this weekend posting pictures. So Councilmember Rodalos?
Before he continues, I'd like to say that I hate these illegal fireworks that have been illegal in the past. They're illegal now. They will always be illegal. And that's what's going off right now. It's almost impossible to catch the people because they go in the air. Some of my neighbors a few blocks down do it all the time. I have no idea where they are, or I would call the police, but I have no idea who's shooting them off. I hate them too. Thank you.
Yeah. Sue Beckmeyer?
Just one quick shout out. I mentioned the planting day down on Palmetto with the bulb outs, and I've neglected to thank public works staff for their support that day, bringing plants, moving mulch, engaging with volunteers, and they were just so fantastic, and really appreciated the efforts of Ray and Ron, and I know Aaron Clark was involved. So I'm grateful to the team for helping us with that day.
Mike O'Neill?
Just wanted to cover two things. Is in regards with Sue Vaterlas, is technically at this time of the year, all fireworks, safe and sane and everything, are illegal, because the safe and sane are only allowed, I think, on July 4th and sold during that 7-day period. So technically, if you see someone with a safe and sane firework, send them off, call the police. Those are also illegal right now. And maybe you'll stop them from letting off a bottle rocket later. And then second, kind of taking off of what Deirdre said, is I was driving through Colma, and I guess the city council there or the police department has actually made it illegal to trick or treat this year, which I thought was a little heavy-handed. We get it about closing the beaches. Oh my God, making trick or treating illegal. Whoa.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, just be safe, everyone. Thank you. And I think that we will hand it over to City Manager Woodhouse.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Martin and Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer and council members, Kevin Woodhouse, the manager. I think most of the communications that I have are going to be some various kudos, thank yous to staff for numerous of the items that council mentioned in their updates. First, regarding the successful movie night that occurred, I just wanted to do a particular shout out to management analyst to Josh Montemayor, as he handled all of those permitting logistics. So we did that, quickly, but appropriately, and it turned out to work well. So thank you, Josh. Additionally, I know Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer mentioned some public works assistance, but I wanted to mention several others, a couple awards and other projects that Public Works has been championing and have received. First, Public Works Administrative Clerk 2, Maria Suzuki, received recently the Award of Administrative Excellence from the American Public Works Association, APWA, Silicon Valley chapter. And also the EQ Basin project has won its second award. The APWA Silicon Valley chapter has given it the Project of the Year in the Sustainable and Green category. And just as a reminder, the whole origin of the equalization project was its environmental benefit to Pacifica in preventing sanitary sewer overflows and flooding. So congratulations to Public Works on those awards. Moving on to a couple different Public Works projects. One that many members of the public may have noticed is that the Anza pump station down at Lindemar Beach, bathrooms and showers are now open. So those have been remodeled and are now available to the public. And another project has been, and the public may notice, the refreshed striping in the Lindemar beach parking lots, as well as in the Rockaway beach parking lots. So those had faded over the years, and we did a quick, smaller project to just refresh the striping. An actual larger project that involves planning and various levels of review relates to doing a more robust, bigger project in the Rockaway parking lots, which will be designed this winter and implemented next summer when the weather is good. I wanted to give also a shout out to North County Fire Authority for their diligence related to this, being on the verge of these public safety shutoffs, power shutoffs, and this weather event, the wind event. So they have, developed their plans and are on standby in case anything were to happen. So, and finally, I wanted to call out that, and I've been mentioning this in Connect with Pacifica because we're on the verge of election day, and there's been a steady stream of voters coming by City Hall where the permanent official ballot box is. People, it's just great. Every time I walk out the door to go, because we have to go across to the other building to use the bathroom. We'll get to that in the next item. But cars are just pulling up regularly and people dropping off their ballots and snapping photos, and that's great. And then also we have a 4-day vote center that's going to be occurring Saturday through Tuesday at the council chambers. And the county offered us, and Public Works put up a very large 4x20 sign on the front of the council chambers. So that's exciting also. But particularly I wanted to give a shout out to City Clerk Sarah Coffey in her work in coordinating with County Elections Office on all of this elections logistics that occur. So it's a big undertaking at this time of year, and she's done a great job doing all that. And that completes my communications. I'm sorry, Mayor Martin, you had asked I address something, did I?
Yeah, it was just the playgrounds.
Oh, the playgrounds, yes, thank you. To my knowledge, the playgrounds, and I'll queue up Director Perez, and in case he wants to get on here and give a more detailed update. But to my knowledge, we have not opened playgrounds yet in Pacifica. We're working on the plan and the logistics for how they're going to open, and it's going to be in the very near future that they open. But there's a lot of operational logistics, installing hand sanitizer units and more that are necessary to do. So if Director Perez comes on and has a different update, please provide that.
Good evening, Council. Yeah, you pretty much city manager pretty much hit that on the head there. And most of this, and not to steal the thunder from them, this is all work that the Public Works Department is going to be doing. And they are waiting for some sanitizer that they're going to use to basically sanitize all the playgrounds, give them a once over before it starts. And that should be happening at the very beginning of next week. And depending on how fast that gets done, then the playgrounds would open after that. We've got signage that's going to be put out. There's also, they had to figure out capacity for each playground, and that number will be posted as well. And on the signage, it's got some rules from the Department of Public Health for the state. Let's see what else. There'll be messaging on our website that'll be up, and we'll be able to push this out through Connect with Pacifica and all the appropriate social media. So we don't have the date yet, but should be happening next week.
Okay, so I won't talk about how I saw people posting pictures in the park this weekend on the slides. Okay, Sue Beckmeyer?
Oops. I'm sorry. I just wanted to double check with the city manager. Is there also a voting center at St. Peter Church in addition to?
Yes, yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I should have mentioned that, but yeah, it's a vote
And
center.
they're open for 4 days, is that right?
Yeah, Saturday through Tuesday, and City Clerk Coffee may have the details available if she wants to provide those.
Yes, so the two 4-day vote centers that will be open in Pacifica starting on Saturday through next Tuesday for October 31st through November 2nd. The hours will be 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then on Election Day, November 3rd, the hours will be from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at both St. Peter's and at the City Council chambers at 2212 Beach Boulevard. At City Hall, we have a ballot drop box only, so no voting services. You can bring your ballot and drop it in the drop box at City Hall if you have your mail-in ballot that you've filled out. And just remember to sign the envelope on your ballot before you drop it into the drop box. And there should be curbside services at the two vote centers to help you if you have your ballot ready to go and just want to drop it off at either of those vote centers. Vote early, don't wait until Election Day. There could be long lines. There will be increased protocols and safety protocols for COVID-19. So if you are going on Election Day to one of the vote centers, you may want to anticipate waiting in longer lines to get in, and to go during non-peak hours would be recommended.
Thank you. I might also mention, as Councilmember Beer mentioned, on Saturday at City Hall is the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Halloween event, Saturday evening. So if you're going to be dropping your ballot off on Saturday, maybe try to do it before that begins in the evening, because hopefully there'll be a good crowd of cars lined up to drive through and be spooked and get some treats from PB&R.
Yep, thanks. Thanks, Kevin. And when you drop off your ballot, make sure that your signature matches your driver's license. I've been told that as a recommendation. Okay, let's move on to, we don't have any public hearings, no items for consideration, but we have a study session regarding air quality and general condition of certain civic center campus facilities. So, City Manager Woodhouse?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Martin, council members. Again, Kevin Woodhouse, City Manager. I'm going to lead this presentation, but I have a large staff team that's been working on this for a year and is available, will be on the call to answer questions and for the discussion. And in addition, we also have Dawn Merkis from the Group 4 architectural firm who has helped us in some of the options design. So she's on the call as well. This is a study session format, so it can be less formal in the dialogue, but that's the discretion of the mayor and the council. And what I have about 20 slides to go through. I'm gonna run through them all. I guess one question for the council would be whether to wait till the end of the presentation before asking questions or take questions during the presentation. And I will just reiterate that with the recognition of the urgency of this project over this last year, it was added as a council priority on the 19 council priorities list. We've been working hard on it over the years, as you'll see, as you'll see. And this is really the first informational update comprehensively to the council as a whole and to the public. So this is a check-in point, a study session, trying to get some feedback and direction as we move into the next phase of this. Did Mayor Martin, did you want to decide about questions during the presentation or at the end?
I personally, I prefer that you go through the presentation, everybody sort of take notes, what slide we were on. You have the slides numbered maybe, and we can go back and touch upon those. Is everyone okay with that? Yeah, okay, great.
Great. I'm gonna try to adjust my camera here. Okay. Next slide, please. So this first slide is really how do we get here to this point? It was in the fall of last year of 2019, while we were updating the city's injury, illness, and prevention program, that the city received comments or was made aware of possible air quality concerns by employees in certain buildings. And so we immediately did an inspection and evaluation of City Hall. And let me, just for the sake of terms, this location here at the intersection of Santa Maria and Francisco, I'll call the Civic Center campus. There's the City Hall building, which is at 170 Santa Maria. And then across the parking lot is the Planning and Parks, Beaches, and Recreation building. So this is primarily concerning these two buildings. So we did the inspection and evaluation of City Hall, what I'll call the P&P building, the Parks and Planning building, the council chambers, the corporate yard buildings at 151 and 155 Milagro. And those initial inspections were conducted by Healthy Building Science. Next slide. And here's what was found at that time. At the City Hall building, HBS determined that there's some areas of the building that have water damage and surface microbial growth, and laboratory testing of air samples indicated airborne spore counts of a common type of mold in the women's restroom. But importantly, no black mold, which folks have heard about. No black mold was observed in any airborne sample. HBS also made various recommendations to address water intrusion and identified areas in the building that need to be checked and repaired or replaced, such as windows, other water damage or stained building materials. And as a result of this inspection, we immediately closed the City Hall bathrooms and the kitchen break room area for employees and public use. So thus my earlier comment that for the last year, employees in City Hall to use restroom facilities have gone across the parking lot to the P&P building. Next slide, please. So at the P&P building, HBS also determined there are areas of, sorry, go back one. So at the P&P building, HBS also determined areas of that building that have water damage, especially on the southern side of the building, as well as surface microbial growth. Again, the laboratory testing of air samples indicated low levels of airborne spores in most of the offices. except those offices along the southern wall, which had airborne spore counts of cladosporium, but again, no black mold was observed in that airborne testing. Again, they made numerous recommendations to address water intrusion, areas of the building that needed to be checked, repaired, replaced, such as windows on the south side of the building and other water damaged stained building materials. So as a result, immediately, similar to the bathrooms at City Hall, certain offices were closed, and that required 4 employees to relocate and share a conference room as their office in the PB&R building. And HBS also evaluated the council chambers and the corporate yard buildings, as mentioned, but both buildings showed acceptable low levels of airborne spores. Next slide, please. So at that point, at that point, the city hired a property restoration company named Belfour, and to verify HBS findings and provide plan for mold remediation for City Hall and the P&P building. And most of the severe damage appeared to be localized along the south-facing wall of the P&P building. So Balfour opened up those walls and found mold, water damage, and termite damage in those buildings. They then provided a cost estimate and a plan, which would be approximately $134,000 for remediating the P&P building, and a cost estimate and plan for the City Hall's mold damage, which would be approximately $95,000. So I'd like to show some visuals now. Pictures worth 1,000 words. So on the next few slides, you'll see some of these pictures. Next slide, please. Showing some of the windowsill, exterior damage, some of the drywall damage. Next slide. Again, more. There's one of the office walls in the south side of the P&P building. Just some carpet damage. Next slide. Ceiling, acoustic, tile stains, exterior window repair or poor condition of that, and some paneling peeling off of moist drywall in that other picture there. Next slide. So at that time, immediately in September of 2019, the city filed an air pollution claim with the Pooled Liability Assurance Network Joint Powers Authority, Plan JPA, that's our insurance carrier, filed a claim for pollution for $700,000. We've been working with Plan JPA and their multiple insurance carriers for a year and are continuing to work with them. And we've received confirmation that at least a portion of the claim, approximately $325,000, is likely to be approved, hasn't definitely been approved. We're continuing our work and awaiting resolution of the remaining portion of that claim. And when we talk about funding strategy for the recommended option later, the insurance bucket of funding is important to that strategy. It's been a long and detailed process with the insurance companies. Next slide. So at this point, what we needed to do is look in more detail at what our options are for for scenarios from the most basic remediation to replacement of buildings. So at that point, we retained Group 4, the architectural firm, and we assessed numerous options and configurations, which I'll present in a minute here. And during this assessment, there's numerous factors that are really important to be mindful of. Of course, cost and affordability for the various options is a primary one, but employee health and safety is a primary driver of this as well. There's also continuity and quality of city services. So how are we going to continue to provide excellent city services in facilities that have this type of problem? And in options for improvement to these facilities, how can we enhance those services? So for example, can we, if we reconfigure the P&P building, can we provide a more efficient service front desk for planning and building and parks and rec, citizen services? Next slide. Oh, can you go back, City Clerk Coffee, please? I didn't talk about it, and it's important. The fourth factor really relates to organizational and employee impacts. And this may be obvious, but it's important to mention that, one's workspace affects the quality of work and the morale of employees. So that has a translation into quality of services to the public. Okay, thank you. Next slide. So here's a summary of the options that were analyzed. First, the very minimalist option is to do a minimal renovation to City Hall, to do a level of renovation that's more robust to the P&P building, and that triggers ADA compliance and renovations. The moderate scenario one, is to do ADA, a larger ADA renovations for both City Hall and PB&R, or the P&P building, as well as some slight remodeling to the community center for additional staff spacing down there. You'll see in here the old police department building column, and that's this old building, rectangular shaped building in the southwest corner of this parcel that used to house police and now is used for storage. So we looked at some options related to that too. So the moderate two is, I believe, more enhanced renovations for the same version as moderate one. And Max E stands for expansion. Max E would be to do the ADA renovations to City Hall and the P&P building, but to also renovate or replace the old police department building here. Max E scenario 2 is to do a little less than Max E1. It's the minimal renovations to City Hall and ADA renovations to the P&P building, and then also use the old PD building. And then the N stands for new, and there were two options: a one-story new City Hall building and a two-story City Hall new building that were addressed. So that's a summary of the different options that were analyzed. And let's move into the next chart, which reflects costs. So for the cost of the minimalist option, it's estimated at 6.7 million. You see the moderate 1 and 2 in the 10 to 11 million range. You see the max expansion 1 a little lower, 9.2 million, but up to max expansion 2 to 12.3 million. And then, of course, the new single story more up near 17 million, and the new two-story Civic Center could be as much as 25 million. And interestingly, on the top part of this table, you see the just generic estimates about life cycle cost efficiency, as well as the phasing convenience of these different options. Next slide. So in terms of timeline moving forward, a few points about timeline. At all of the renovation levels, a building code and historic analysis would need to be conducted. A site survey and structural investigation for the initial conceptual design would need to be conducted. And this work could take 3 to 4 months and cost almost $200,000. Once the conceptual design is complete, then there would be review of the conceptual plan with the architect, moving into design construction plan preparation and permitting, and that could take 6 to 8 months. And then bidding, award of contract, and construction duration would take approximately a year. So all told, a timeline that we're talking about for Civic Center, addressing the Civic Center problems could be approximately 2 years. Next slide, please. Oh, I should mention on this, I mean, this is not a detailed sort of schedule and all the various check-in points. There would obviously be check-in points with the city council, action that city council would need to take at certain points in the process, et cetera. So now I want to spend a minute and talk about relocation. All of the options presented would require relocation of the employees that work at the Civic Center. And there are 2 relocation options that we evaluated. Basically, the one option is to buy or rent portables and install them probably in the parking lot at Salada and Francisco, and to have a temporary Civic Center in portables. The other option is to look at existing city facilities where we could relocate to. So I'll talk first about the portables option. Again, I mentioned the concept would be to put portable office trailers in this parking lot here. Fairly involved process of obtaining permits, temporary power, installing water and sewer connections, and that cost to deliver and set up the portables could be $100,000. Cost related to utility hookups and city fees. The timeline to actually set up the portables and move employees in could be 3 weeks for the setup, and then moving employees and equipment another week. So fairly quickly, you see the monthly rental for portables is approximately $26,000 for that portable. So this total cost would add up to the first year of over $400,000, and moving costs would be on top of that. And then you would have, depending on how long you were in there, you'd have second year rental costs and such. Next slide, please. So then we also looked at what are city existing offices or space that could be used. So one that became available recently was the San Francisco Fire Employee Credit Union, located at Sanchez Art Center, which the city owns. The credit union has vacated that property, and that's a space that after it was repainted and recarpeted, because it's in pretty bad condition, and internet dialed in there, could be available and house up to 4 employees. And that location would make the most sense for the city's HR division because of the privacy needs that the HR division has in engaging with employees. The cost to get that space going is estimated to be approximately $35,000. At the same time, next slide, please. What we looked at is the community center and the back rooms, both the preschool rooms and the dance studio in the back part of the community center, did some space analysis and determined that that space could handle the employees currently staffed in City Hall and the P&P building by setting up 25 cubicle spaces and utilizing some of the vacant offices there. We could move into that space. Additionally, related to that space, we could create a reception area, sort of a front desk and counter that would service the public efficiently. Importantly, we're in a facilities closure phase with the coronavirus, and that's going to be coming back slowly. And a lot of the programming at the community center is anticipated to come back slowly. So there isn't anticipated to be a big programming hit to the community center if we were to utilize that space. And in terms of serving the public, if there was a queue for if we did open, public at our counters, any line queuing up for the building counter, planning counter, or business license, et cetera, would be able to distance themselves appropriately and be indoors at that space, whereas here at the current Civic Center, those lines would have to occur outside. So this option perhaps serves the public better. There's some evaluation of electrical system down there that would need to be done. The new desks and furnishers and fixtures and furnishings that would be used could be reused when the Civic Center was remediated and employees moved back. This cost for utilizing the community center space would be approximately $160,000, again, plus moving costs, the same moving costs as the portables option. And the setup is estimated to take approximately 2 weeks and could take a week to move all the files and equipment. So similar setup and moving time as the portables option. Next slide. So I wanted to touch on the funding strategy, and we obviously, this is a major question, and we have more work to do on how could this, let's say the minimalist option, which is the one that is my recommendation at the time, how could the city afford $6.7 million renovation? So I mentioned the insurance bucket of money contributes to that. We also have prudently, funded to a small degree a facility maintenance and replacement fund, which currently has just over 200,000 in it. We also have our annual excess ERAF funding that comes in, and from time to time, as priority needs dictate, we allocate some of that funding. The council approves allocation of some of that funding to some other urgent costs. So that's a potential source. Depending on the status of our unallocated general fund balance, that might be a one-time funding source to look at. We're investigating low or no interest loans, potential grant funding. I don't know that there's a lot of grant funding that exists for city facilities, but the low or no interest loans is a possibility. We're talking with the state about the infrastructure bank program. And then there's also debt borrowing. And there's a couple options here. One to look at in more detail would be restructuring of existing debt and then deferring principal amounts in that restructure for upfront budget relief that could be applied to this project. Or there's issuance of new debt. And for example, if we were to issue new debt, a $7 million loan with an interest rate of 3.5%, 25-year term, would be an estimated annual debt service of approximately $450,000. So one of the concepts, if we had to issue new debt, would be to use various one-time funding sources to help lower the debt issuance and thus lower our annual debt service payment. So this is intended to not be that specific, but express some of the various funding strategies that we need to do more analysis about. And timing, of course, is critical. And so next slide, please, and I'll talk a little bit about timing. So in terms of next steps, if the council were to concur with my recommendation that the minimalist option is the most feasible and prudent, we would proceed with more detailed analysis as discussed of the funding strategies in parallel with beginning conceptual design phase with the code, historic, site, and structural analysis. And what I would be recommending is that as we work on the funding strategy, that we consider, that the council consider that in the context of budget development for developing the fiscal year 21-22, so that we have the full financial picture in making that decision. And as you're aware, we're beginning our mid-year budget analysis, you know, a robust mid-year analysis in January with our mid-year report. And if we get into the spring and our budget adoption and balancing for next fiscal year and funding for this project of 6.7 million proves infeasible, then the conceptual design phase could be paused as necessary and the plan for the Civic Center revisited. At the same time, since no matter what option we do, we're going to need to relocate, and we'll look at different ways of whether we need to phase relocation or do it all at once, but we would proceed with the design and prep for Civic Center relocation to the community center if the council supports that option. And after tonight, we would need to develop a timeline for that relocation that would minimize service impacts to the public. That completes the presentation and available for any questions. The entire staff team can come on with video if you'd like, and we can answer questions.
Anyone have any right off the bat? That was a lot of work. Mike?
Kevin, how many employees now work in City Hall and how many work in the PNP building? And
I know,
then
yeah.
what's the square footage of the two buildings?
Oh, that's a question that I'm going to have to turn to either Dawn or others to answer on the square footage. I believe the total employees in the Civic Center is approximately 25. And one thing that is a good point that I forgot to mention is that also during this coronavirus time, we're utilizing remote working capabilities. And that actually benefits the relocation to the community center, because one of the issues in being in tight space is, you know, having to wear masks to be health safe. But if we have sort of rotation and remote working happening, then the space can be used more efficiently from the COVID health protective perspective. But Dawn or others might be able to answer the square footage.
Well, no. Well, how many employees are in City Hall? How many in PB&R? How many in the planning department section of the building?
Yeah. Do you guys have that breakdown?
So this is Lisa Peterson. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, the Director of Public Works. We do actually have a spreadsheet that has all that information. I think Leah is on the call. She might actually have that at her fingertips. I do have the information about the square footage I can give you while we look up the number of employees, if that helps.
Sure.
So currently, right now at the City Hall, the total square footage there that I'm seeing is 5,000, basically 5,700 square feet. And then it looks like it's for the PMP building, it looks like 5,690, so basically about 5,700 square feet. So they're both similar size.
Okay, and so this is probably more a question for Dawn, is what is the recommended number of square footage an employee needs, roughly?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the
Hello.
council.
Good to see you again, Dawn. Yes.
Very nice to see everyone as well. So it really, there's a broad range. When you look at square foot per employees, your typical public facilities tend to be much higher than what current private sector has. And that can range anywhere from 300 to 400 square foot per employee. Current practices have been to become much more streamlined, much more efficient with technology, less paper storage, smaller workspaces, and that typically can range for current kind of planning practices anywhere from 150 to 200 square feet per employee. One of the things to keep in mind, though, with the pandemic, kind of best practices and everything is still evolving and kind of reverting back to perhaps larger spaces, more flexible spaces that accommodate moving furniture around to create more social distancing as well as separation. The plan that we did look at for your facility was definitely more on the efficient side in terms of square foot per employee, and really taking into use kind of the more flexible type of workspaces as well as kind of more efficient workspaces.
Okay. Can we buy the building behind you in your backdrop?
Well,
Used?
that's our office.
I know. I know it's your office. It looks good, City Hall, you know. Okay. And then do we have the number of employees that are working in the different buildings?
I think Leah has that.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. This is Leah Maksud, HR manager. Nice to see you all. Are you looking for the numbers currently with like people working remotely, or are you wanting the numbers prior to COVID and the remote work?
Prior to COVID.
Okay, prior to COVID in the Civic Center, the City Hall 170 Santa Maria, we had approximately 26 employees. And then in our planning department, approximately 10. We also have some contractors there as well too. And then also in our PB&R, I want to say approximately 10 as well, give or take a few. And anybody feel free to jump in if there's any corrections with that.
6. PB&R has 6.
6. Okay. It's 26 people in City Hall. Is that part-timers or is that all full-timers? Well,
Majority
for PB&R, they're all full-timers in City Hall? Okay.
Majority of them. We do have a couple of part-timers. For instance, we have one IT part-timer, but that person also works in other locations as well too. In HR, there's one part-timer, but that person hasn't been onboarded yet, but they will be fairly soon.
So, because I don't know, all the times I've been in City Hall, I don't think I've ever seen 26 people in there. Now, I'm talking about people that actually need a desk to sit down there and do their job. Like the part-timer that floats in to fix a computer doesn't really count. You know what I mean? As a person in the City Hall.
Through the mayor, I have the latest spreadsheet, at least from when we were doing our building assessment, and it shows 17 in City Hall. So 5 in the city manager's office, 1 city clerk, 2 in human resources, 5 in finance, 4 in IT. Planning is 12 and PB&R 6.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about the spaces that you're considering for the minimalist? Is it, I'm always thinking of our environment. So are we also thinking about revising our policy for those types of flexible workspaces if, for instance, somebody wants to come in the office 2 days a week, they can use the same office as somebody who wants to come in 2 days a week, and then they can have that space cleaned and repurposed.
Yeah.
So I,
Oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
Dawn. Oh, I was just going to clarify, Mayor Martin, are you talking about for the renovated minimalist option? Or are you talking about at this community center for the
I'm
relocation?
talking about the renovated minimalist option. When you, I mean, Dawn, you had said we're looking at efficiencies, but also flexible. So
Absolutely.
I was curious
Yeah.
what that looked like.
Yeah, and that's called hoteling, where you can do kind of the shared workspaces. And definitely that was something staff came back to us and asked us to kind of make sure that that flexibility was in the planning work later this summer. And so definitely that can be accommodated in the square footage that is included in the minimalist option.
Okay. And when I mentioned the environment, not just a work environment, but also our
Transportation, yeah.
Yeah, and so I had recommended a couple years ago that we try to incorporate a work from home option for those that are, we can help work towards our climate action plan and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that could also kind of count, if you will. A thought, Kevin and Leah.
Yeah, and related to that, at our meeting the other day, I said, we don't want to lose sight of that. Typically, a tendency or a desire might be to raise a building and build a new LEED certified building, but actually remodeling existing buildings is often much more net environmental benefit.
Well, I think it's a lot of.
Yeah, and just
Go ahead.
sorry, this is Leah again. Just to add on, we are actually updating our policies, and we're in the process of that. And part of that will include our current remote work options potentially, and other avenues for that as well too.
Solid. Well, this is a huge evaluation, and I appreciate the diligence that went into it in proposing all the options. I also appreciate that Kevin, you put some thought into it and your reasoning and why. And I would be happy to support that minimalist recommendation.
If we, I know we need to do public comment, but if there's other questions for the staff team, we should finish those.
Does anyone have any other questions for Mayor Pro Tem?
Oh, I think that Council Member Bauerloss had her hand up first. Do you want to go first, Sue?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I have a couple of concerns that I don't necessarily have to have the answer right now. I'm willing to float the question and we can talk about it later. But there's a couple of impact type questions that I'm concerned about, and one idea. The impact question has to do with the impact of losing the space that is presently, well, not presently because of COVID, but pre-COVID had a purpose for Parks and Rec, right? We had programs we were doing in those spaces. And so while we're not using it right now for those purposes, and we don't know exactly how long that's going to be true, although maybe we're making some assumptions around that, and I don't know what those are. I'm worried about what I've perceived to be already a crowded situation at the community center between senior services and whatever kinds of programs we're doing with preschool age, not preschool, but I know there's classes there, right, for littles and their parents too, as I recall. So maybe I'm out of date too on that, but I just feel like if I'm understanding the proposal, we're going to take the dance studio space and the little kid childcare space in the back of the building and make that into offices for a period of at least 2 years.
I would say up to 2 years. It just depends on the option that is pursued. And we can talk about that because we we did talk about it a lot to evaluate what that impact is. And I think Director Perez can really talk to the programming that occurs and the community center, senior center, and rec staff view on that.
Please.
Sure. I can talk a little bit about that and answer any questions that you might have. But obviously, currently, the community center is not being used for any programs at this time outside of our senior services grab and go and Meals on Wheels preparation. It's pretty much nothing's happening. And so we took a look at numbers that we had for 2018-19 because we didn't have a full 19-20 year just to see what it would be. And again, we're talking about the 2 preschool rooms and the dance studio that's back there. We call it the dance pod. If the seniors were to come back at any time, our plan would be no impact to their programming at all. And we would relocate or reschedule any class that we would have for them to another part of the building. And just, through mostly it'll have a lot of scheduling and stuff, but we can make that happen. As far as the preschool classes, those are what we call enrichment. So they're not like childcare. They don't last all day. They're maybe in an hour, a few hours, or just the morning for different classes and stuff. And one of the things that we've had trouble with is just finding teachers to make those classes go. So that was this last year prior to COVID was a little rough for us. And before summer, we had already planned to not have any of those classes for the summer based on staffing and such. But it would be about, if it was a normal year, we might have 3 sessions. So not a summer session, but 3 sessions, and about 60 kids might be enrolled during that time for those sessions. I don't know, right now, one of the main things is childcare, that we have at school sites and our preschool sites for all day, and being able to provide that. I see coming back, however we come back from COVID, that's going to be more of a concern for us than, the enrichment classes. Although I, know people love them and all that stuff, but we've got to, I'm pretty convinced this is a good trade-off. We had looked at other parts of the building, like sort of the northwest part, and that would have impacted a whole bunch more things. This was basically the least impactful way for us to use a building that we already have and has a lot of the stuff already set up for us. And we'll just take probably the minimal amount of, remodeling or reconfiguring to make it work. So that's pretty much what will happen for us is those preschool classes will have an impact. We do have some nighttime recreation classes, and they would get relocated as well. And we'd have to do a little more work figuring that out. But we do have maybe some other space. But the unknown thing is we don't know when it's going to be okay for people to come back and do these kinds of things. And I have, I don't know for a fact, but I feel as if the seniors will be one of the last groups, unfortunately, to get some indoor time in a group together. And that could possibly not be till the end of next year.
Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah.
Have you gotten to talk yet, Sue? That allows?
No, it's
Sorry.
okay. Just pass me by.
I
Yeah,
can't.
go ahead, Sue.
Okay. I can see consolidating offices together. It would make a lot of sense to have single reception, single copier. Expenses would be eliminated hugely by consolidating these different departments into one building. And I think that's totally a benefit. Of course, would like to keep all employees. That is, I don't want to see anyone laid off because of it. But the other thing is, have you looked at outside buildings that may be available that are already existing?
Over time, we have made inquiries to other spots like the US Bank building, at Eureka Square, and none are available, and so haven't had any luck. My guess is that any outside building, and I should ask, are you talking about the temporary relocation? Are you talking about a permanent facility?
Either.
Yeah. So I guess the what we don't know is, what a lease cost would be, or a purchase cost, obviously. But the one thing that I didn't mention, if I could take a second to mention it, which also is important because it's part of the rationale behind the minimalist option compared to doing just a very pure environmental remediation option, is that the minimalist option improves the Civic Center buildings enough to last quite a while. I don't know if it's 10 years, 15 years, or what. And so, over that time and during that time is when the city could do planning for a much distant future Civic Center replacement. But if you were to say this remodel would last 10 or 15 years, the question you're asking is how would that compare to a lease cost of a different building or a purchase cost of a different building? But really the obstacles that we've hit is no great options have presented themselves in Pacifica. I think the US Bank was a good option because they didn't seem to be that busy, and we inquired with the owners and they weren't interested. They had just actually renewed their lease. I think this was a year and a half or two ago to US Bank. So, but we continue, our eyes and ears wide open to explore options for sure.
And I know that you and I discussed like a second floor on the community center and making this permanent, but that really would take major evaluation to determine whether or not the community center would be able to hold an additional floor.
Yeah, and I did explore that with the staff team, and Director Peterson might weigh in on this because she has some experience with adding second floors to buildings. But the one thing I can say is that we know that adding on to an existing building would be much more expensive than the minimalist option. So
right, but I'm thinking lasting forever.
Yeah, so long term, we would definitely want to explore in maybe more detail for a long-term solution what that would cost. And if Director Peterson wants to weigh in on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we were discussing it, we were sort of comparing it to the minimalist option, and based on that, it definitely, from my experience and having done these studies in the past, that would be something that would be relatively expensive. But of course, if you are comparing it to a new building or something more substantial, it certainly is something that we should look into at that point.
So is 10 or 15 years enough? Like, is the minimalist option going to be enough, or will there has to be more work done, because you're not doing it completely? You see what I'm saying? Like, is that enough?
Yeah, and I should ask Dawn about this because I just sort of threw out the 10 or 15 year timeline for renovation, but if you could weigh in on that.
Yeah, I can. So the improvements done to the planning and Parks, Beach and Recreation building, you could expect to last probably 15 to 20 years. That really is a major rehab to that building, new mechanical system, new infrastructure, a whole new facelift, and that's what the budget covers for that. The City Hall building is the one that's probably more of a short-term solution. The budget for that is much smaller. It's not doing the full ADA improvements. It's kind of looking at equal facilitation in terms of the ADA restrooms on the first floor. There's no elevator in that option. And so that option for City Hall is a much smaller budget. It's a quarter of the budget. and it is more expensive renovation because it's 2 floors and it's broken up smaller. The structural system is not necessarily as flexible either. And so it's really a combination of kind of a medium term solution for Parks, Beach, and Recreation building and planning, and then kind of more of a facelift and interior improvements, as well as restroom improvements and accessibility improvements on the first floor for the City Hall.
Has there been any look at the condition of the community center? Because I know staff, the public, and even just visually looking around, walking around it, you know, it's kind of seen better days also. Has to, you know what I mean? Just to look at it and see its viability. Because AT&T got rid of it for a reason, gave it to us, you know.
I'm not aware of any concerns about the community center building, or I mean specific problems, but I know that the air system needs a little jiggering, but perhaps Director Perez knows more specifically. I don't know if Dawn has looked at that at all, but perhaps Director Perez knows more.
Hi. I'm guessing that Councilmember O'Neill's is talking about just the exterior. You were talking about walking around and it's seen better days, or are you talking about the interior?
Well, most of the issues people have told me about it is the exterior.
Right.
And then, yeah, so.
Yeah. So it's a concrete building, right? And there are some areas where there's exposed rebar and some concrete chipping and things like that. That's not my area of expertise. But you know, we've had in recent years the roof done. I guess it's probably like a 25 year roof or something, and it was probably done, you know, 10, 12 years ago or something, and then also even redone to some extent more recently. And I agree with the city manager that the air system is, you know, leaves a little bit to be desired, but you know, it's fairly solid on the inside.
Okay. And then
Should we open it to the public? Or do you have more questions, Mike?
no, go back to the public. I was going back to the staff memo. So yeah,
Okay.
open up to the public. It's fine.
Okay, so I will open it up for public comment. If anyone has any comments on this item, now would be the time to raise your hand. Seeing now none, I will close public comment and come back to council.
A question from the staff report.
Oh, we did. Hang on. Wait.
Oh, sorry.
Hold on. Oh, I didn't see any hand raised. Oh, there's the one. Okay, good. Go ahead.
Do we need to use a timer, Clerk Coffee, or?
I will open public comment back up because I didn't see that hand. Thank you.
Cindy Abbott, you're our first speaker.
Hello.
We
So
can hear
I just want, hi. So I just want to say that I appreciate this topic coming up tonight, as it's been something that unfortunately has been getting increasingly worse over the years and months, and the health and safety of the employees of the city of Pacifica is, you know, such an important matter. And I'd also like to say hello to Dawn, and it's good to know that the knowledge of her company has helped shape the options that have been provided tonight. Being a member of the Library Advisory Committee, we did have an option back at the end of 2018 with a large branch library, option number 3 being a combined City Hall and new large branch library in Sharp Park. And so I was just wondering if, since it looks like there needs to be some time of relocation anyway, is that anything to look at again either, or is time more of the essence here for the offices? Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised, so we can close public comment.
I have a question here. I
And
noticed.
before you ask, Mike, can we
Sure.
just touch upon that real quickly? What Cindy Abbott just asked about. If I think the answer is yes. Is time of the essence, or is this something that could also be taken into consideration?
Yeah, I also had that question too.
Me too.
Library, yeah.
Well, so time is of the essence to relocate staff and to do something to these buildings. I think if I understood it correctly, the option that was considered regarding library was, that Ms. Abbott presented was a joint library civic center project. Is that the concept that was being suggested there?
Yeah. So I think her question was, is time of the essence, or is that something that we can still consider if and when we are going to vote on a library concept?
So
we just use that as part of the time, that we're gonna think about it after we do potentially a minimalist option. And sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer, you had something to add.
I was thinking along the same lines, and wondered if staff had considered that as an option when in reference to buildings that the city already owns. However, I will also say that I spent a fair bit of time on study for a new library and various options. And one of the things that was always true, as I recall, and Dawn could speak to this more, obviously, is that because of ADA compliance, that Sanchez Library there was a limit, as I recall, to how much we could do to that building before we would have to take the bigger step and do a big ADA overhaul. And it may be that was just in concept of it being for a library as opposed to for another purpose. So I did want to just raise that same question.
Go ahead, Dawn.
Okay. So yeah, I don't think we did look at it for a different use. There are some triggers with change of use in the building code. And so ADA access and ADA improvements for Sanchez, I imagine would be triggered with the change from a library to basically office use. If that's what you're thinking of for temporary facilities, or yeah.
Well, if I recall, the latest, as Cindy Abbott was referring to, the latest proposal was a main library with a satellite, and that the proposed concept was half of the building roughly be potentially used in collaboration with the city, with Parks and Rec in some kind of way, and the other half be continuing as a library. At that time, the proposal is a self-service option and all of those different library service parameters, but just the concept of half city functions, half library functions is what I was referring.
Yeah, and the square footage of the Sanchez Library is significantly smaller. And so it's not, it's not even half the size of either City Hall or Planning, Parks, Beach and Recreation Building. So and then the inefficiency of splitting staff up to two different sites is also probably a consideration as well.
And one of those sites being in the far south end of town in terms of the issues about transportation and
access.
Thank you.
I have a question, or did you want to say something, Mike?
Yeah, I just had a question. I think we need to keep City Hall kind of more accessible up in the north end of town because everybody has to go out that way. And I do think it's time of the essence. I don't think we could wait to pass a bond to do it. But I have a question here on page 5 of the staff report. It says, in looking at renting a trailer or whatever, it says, following the first year cost is $412,000. the yearly cost would be 312,000. Where does what's in that 312,000? Because if it's like utilities be paid either way. Is that, and you said earlier at one of the at the presentation that the monthly rental for the trailer would be 26,000. So that doesn't quite get to the 312, does it? 26 times 12.
Yeah, Deputy Director Bautista.
Oh yeah, I see. Yeah, that's right. That's where you got the 312. I just caught
That's
that.
correct.
I just caught that. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if we can like move some things around, because I personally think that City Hall needs to be ADA compliant. And so is it possible to add that in to the minimalist approach?
I just real quickly, I think that pushes it into the moderate scenario, but I'll turn back to Dawn as well on the costs for an elevator and et cetera.
Yeah. So and the concern, part of the kind of surveys that need to be done initially to determine exactly what is triggered by the historic designation. It's eligible for the local register, your city hall. And so we really need to have that historic survey done to see what are the elements that are contributing to making it historical. Is it because it was the schoolhouse? Is it because somebody important was there? Or is it because of the architecture? And all of those things really inform the options that we have for renovation. And so at this high level, I think city manager is absolutely correct for budget numbers for the city hall to look at ADA compliance. We would then have to look at the higher budget number that is in the moderate option, which construction cost is again up at that $400 a square foot and takes you up to about 23 or 2.3 million for that. And it's a broad stroke budget right now because we don't have the details to be able to, refine it down to give you real detailed options for implementation. It's kind of a broad stroke at this level.
Is the historic designation, was that initiated here by the city or is that like a state designation?
Right now it's, and Director Wiremeister can answer this actually. So I'll defer to Tina.
It's a local designation, and
Can we revoke that?
What was that?
Can we revoke that?
It is part of our Unicode, so I'd have to do some research, but possibly.
Because I mean the building is almost 100 years old, and I'd hate to. I'm not against the ADA compliance. I'm not speaking against that. I'm just speaking about it's almost 100 years old or over 100 years old, and full of termites and the other assorted issues. That is it worth dropping that much money into a building that in today's world? And I would almost propose this. The reason I was asking the other issues about the numbers and square footage and all that is, and looking at the one chart you have, would it be possible HR to the Sanchez Arts Center, then I feel like I'm playing Battleship, okay? HR to the Sanchez Arts Center, and then PB&R to the community center, and then City Hall moves into where PB&R is, and then we just totally eliminate the cost of City Hall at that point, and everything is ADA compliant because it's all one level. Is that looked at, or?
Councilmember O'Neill, you mean so the minimalist renovation, which mainly addresses the ADA and issues at the PNP building, you're saying, and then just vacate City Hall and use that building as much as possible with dispersing some staff elsewhere. Is that the concept you're talking about?
Right. It's kind of just a hybrid of the PB&R goes to the community center, the HR goes to the Sanchez Arts Center, and then the City Hall staff kind of goes into where PB&R was at the PMP building. Yes, and therefore you eliminate any of the costs of City Hall, which is 1.4 to 4.5 million.
Yeah. Well, we didn't specifically talk about that, but we could certainly consider that and look at what that does to dividing up staff and divisions, but what efficiency could be gained by doing that as well. I think it's something as we look at conceptual design and really explore the funding strategy and what's realistic out of the funding strategy.
The modular building, I was in that building once, and that'd be like sentencing the employee to the dungeon, the old police building. It's pretty nasty in there.
But good for storage. So.
Oh, it's fine for storage. Yeah.
So my question on Mike's proposal is there enough square footage, and the concept, I liked hearing the concept of sort of one-stop service location for our citizens. And it seemed like there was some discussion. The city manager was, in his presentation, was thinking about actually being able to combine PB&R and planning from a front desk standpoint. And Councilmember Vaterlos was talking about that too. And so in a way, it's kind of the same thing, Mike, but it is in two locations. And you're saying put all the PB&R permanently in the community center.
Right.
And what does that look like? Is there enough square footage? Is it reasonable for a long-term solution? And then put all the City Hall, 26 people or whatever it was that we don't
know. No, you see, if you put HR, you're down, City Hall has 17, you're down to 13 people.
Oh.
Right? And
okay.
So you have 6 in PB&R now. So you'd actually have about the same number of employees in the City Hall section of that building as you have in planning right now. So the same number of employees in both halves, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is staff?
Just a couple thoughts. I think we should, explore the space needs and the numbers. I can say operationally, it would be good for the city manager's office to be in close proximity to HR. That's one factor, but that's only 2 employees. So, thinking about that long term, right now, 2.5, sorry. I guess I would turn to Director Perez as to whether customers to PB&R also need to bop over to the finance desk in the services they receive. I'm not certain about that interaction.
Yeah, that would probably not usually. I don't think we usually have that. We take money from everybody for all the services that we provide. It's not usual that they would have to go over to finance as a result of doing business with us.
Well, that could just be handled on the internet because we're doing business license renewals now online. So PB&R they could do PB&R online. So
yeah, I think we'll take that idea back and hash it out and see how that plays out with it.
You already proposed moving HR to Sanchez. Was that a permanent move, or was that just a temporary?
Yeah, that was just temporary, and also depends on the issues at that room at Sanchez, and you know, it could be that HR is also temporarily at the community center with us, but we wanted to throw that option out there that might be, you know, either at the community center temporarily or at Sanchez.
I have that same question. Is it a permanent move or a temporary move? And in light of, you know, in having been in that office a few times for the credit union, it seems not to renovate yet a third building, but it seems like there may be some opportunity in that kind of lobby-ish area that seems kind of not that well used outside of where the credit union is. There, in other words, there could possibly be more space there that could be utilized for the purposes for which you're proposing it than appear to be with just where the credit union was.
Yeah, I know what lobby space you're talking about. That's sort of public access to bathrooms kind of space. There's bathrooms.
There's
there.
also a studio that's located, that the door to that studio is located in that area.
In that entryway?
Yes.
But on a permanent basis, I wouldn't recommend being separated from HR, or that HR be separated from the city manager's office. But that doesn't mean we can't look at what Councilmember O'Neill's suggestion was, you know, in terms of PB&R staff being permanently at the community center and seeing what we can do with the space in that one building. With finance, you know, finance is the main bulk of folks there. So,
but then again, some of the finance that's a job that they could do off site if they wanted to work at home or something like that also. Because we should look at that option, you know, to minimize the cost. Because I looked at it right now, and Dawn said that by modern standards, you want 150 to 200 square feet per employee. And based on the numbers you gave me and the 5,700 feet City Hall is, each employee now has about 160 square feet. So we're right in that same ballpark now.
You are, but you know, a lot of the things that you're doing right now are pretty inefficient too. So I think the ability to reconfigure the P&P building to accommodate different staff, depending on if Parks, Beach, and Recreation was to move, could certainly be included in the next steps. It's there's things that are kind of in progress, like the moving all of the files to digital files in terms of the planning department and the building department, and a lot of things are again kind of in between being fully at the most efficient level of where digitalization has taken us with technology and what your current practices are. And so those are things that kind of need to come together in the next step of planning.
Do you need to do a study to see about digitization of the records? And I guess Michelle would have to look in to see if a copy of some records is good for the retention period of whatever we have. To see about cutting down on some of the square footage.
Yeah, that work is already underway. Our document retention schedule is being developed, and our document management system is being developed as well. So those are two important technology improvements that we currently have on the way.
You're still going to have to move everyone, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of what you decide to do in the next steps, it would be nice if we like thought about, you know, because I think it would be good to have everyone together at the community center, and that's just where I'm leaning. And then with the minimalist approach.
I'm
Are
with
you-
Mary. I agree in that, and also the research into what can we do to make the minimalist approach ADA without tipping the scales.
And looking at what Mike was suggesting. too. I mean,
Right,
that's-
right. The other options you
Yeah.
said we need to go back and research. We're not going to be able to hash it out this evening because obviously we don't have all the information that we need.
Right.
What would be the length of time to, it looked like it was pretty minimal to get the community center ready to have, let's say, PBNR move to the community center. And then is there any estimate as how long it would take to remodel, let's say, that one side of the PBNR building? Or actually you'd move planning and PBNR down to the community center, remodel the whole building, and then go forward like that. Okay, so that was about 2 years, you said, right?
I think 2 years at the outer length, but maybe Dawn can also weigh in, or Director Peterson on that.
Now, would all these remodels at the community, at the PBNR and City Hall need to go through the Coastal Commission?
I'll turn to Director Wehrmeister for that. I believe so. But.
So they would not need to go to the Coastal Commission. They're within our permit jurisdiction. The remodels may be eligible for an exemption because they're only remodeling existing buildings, but I need to see the more detailed plans once we get there as to whether or not we can qualify for an exemption, or if we would need to process CDPs for the city's projects. Certainly new buildings would require CDPs, of course. I'll also note that the existing City Hall area is not in the appeals jurisdiction. So it would be Planning Commission review and City Council only if appealed.
Thank you.
So do we sort of have a consensus and direction?
Yeah.
Sue Varlosh is shaking her head now.
There were so many different ideas thrown out. I mean, I don't know how you could have a consensus. Move these, move here, move there, move back, So
I mean, they were ideas, and Dawn, you captured those ideas, correct? Right?
Yes, I think we heard the ideas to look at analysis for potentially reconfiguration for the option of the P&P building as one renovated facility, and maybe not improving City Hall, which could be part of the analysis, and the historical resource analysis would also help inform that as to the cost if we were to continue making that ADA. I think, Mayor, as you had indicated, if it was to be reused, it would be nice for that to be ADA accessible as well. And then I think the other options for relocating portions of Parks, Beach, and Recreation to the community center as alleviation of space needs at the PNP building.
That sounds pretty well captured from what I heard. Mary, did we miss something?
I just have a question I just thought about. It would be nice to hear from staff. Like, is there like a survey maybe that you can hand out to staff? Because I would like to know what they would like too, because if this is directly affecting them.
Good point, Mary.
Yeah, as we move into conceptual design, I was envisioning that we would have an input mechanism from staff. If not, some diverse team that is giving input into the process. I think that's the point.
Okay, good. Because I wouldn't feel comfortable making a final decision if I didn't know what they wanted.
That's a good point, Mary. So then tonight was the study session, right? You gave us all the information we need to know to be able to give you some more direction in terms of getting closer to what you would present. And I think what we all said was, for the most part, stick to the minimalist, which is what you had recommended, Kevin, with potentially some changes that other folks had mentioned this evening.
Yeah, and so, and what I'm hearing is that the relocation, to the extent that it's necessary, given whatever conceptual design we're doing, the relocation to the community center is, the council is supporting that location, and potentially the Sanchez, the credit union office space, former credit union, and that we would proceed with, work with group 4 on the conceptual design, and that we're going to need to dig more into all of our funding strategy options as that rolls into our mid-year and into the budget for next year, to know the funding feasibility of this in the context of all the funding obligations the city has.
Yeah.
So lots of great input, and this is a tough project. Like many in Pacifica, we find ourselves at a point where not doing or doing nothing is not an option. So we like to do things and move things forward. So thank you.
We do like to do things. That's true. Everybody okay with this discussion? Ready?
Do we need to officially adjourn the other meeting? I don't think we adjourned it.
No, I think because we made this study session an agenda item. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
It's all part of the same regular meeting.
Oh, okay.
All right, wonderful. Well, thanks, Dawn, and everybody who joined from the city this evening. We will adjourn. It is 9:05 p.m. Thank you.